into the questions into the lesson for today. We'll get there in a second. Let's go back to free will. An extra blank slide. Okay, starting with this. I like this. It's one of my favorite little toys. Are you familiar with these? The light up balls? Mm-hmm. Okay. They can light up. All right. Melissa, would you please make this ball light up? As an act of her will, Melissa could make the ball light up because the ball lights up. It's made to light up. It knows how to light up, and she could cause it. Debbie could make the ball blue, but not only blue, because the ball is made that way. And Tom failed utterly at the task because there's just
I couldn't keep it.
he can't levitate. I guess we'd worry a little bit about.
Tom's not a magician, in other words.
Well, yeah. If we were going to practice those magic arts, that would not be good. But we can do some things of our free will, like make the ball light up. And there are some things we can't do of our free will, like suspend the ball in the air, right?
Levitate. Make it levitate.
I mean, we can't do that. We can only sort of make it blue. We love free will in our society, right? We are all about choosing what we want to do. We tell the kiddos in college, come to college, and we will help you fulfill all of your dreams. And we talk a lot about free will and determinism. And we talk about that as if that's all very clear. But the whole free will thing, true or false? Human beings have free will.
Who has?
True, human beings?
Yes, true.
True. Human beings have free will. Absolutely. And you can understand why some people struggle with that in relation to the kind of things we're talking about here, in relation to the Reformed teaching, right? If God knows everything, how could it be that then it gives us free will if he already knows what's going to happen? So those are some of the things that I just love, the way the Westminster helps us struggle with the issue of free will. I was telling them in there, I think I'm getting too into this. I had a dream that I was stuck in downtown London. I didn't know where I was, but I had to get back to a dormitory called Westminster, and I couldn't find the bus back to Westminster. So I think I'm embracing this a bit too much. Okay, let's think a bit. And then I woke up, and here I was supposed to teach this. Okay. God has given man a will which by nature is free. It is not forced or necessarily inclined toward good and evil. Okay. God has given, not inclined toward good or evil. Well, we're talking about what was initially given, right? True or false, in the garden, before the fall, Adam and Eve could sin. Did they have the capacity to sin?
Sure.
They did. They did. Augustine has a cool way of putting that. There's some Latin phrases, I don't remember what they are, but they had the possibility of not sinning, and they had the possibility of sinning. Right? So they have a will. The will can go either way. Let's look at a couple of things that point to that. Could somebody find Deuteronomy 30:19, and somebody else find, let's say James 4:7. Who's going to find Deuteronomy for us? Wave at me.
I got that.
Okay, you got that Deuteronomy? But if you want to go ahead and read it, Melissa, that'd be great.
I call heaven and earth to witness against you today, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore, choose life, that you and your offspring may live.
Here you go. Life and death. Life and death, which would you choose? Duh, as my kids would say. Of course. You would choose life, and yet. Does somebody have James 4:7 yet? Please.
Yes, submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you.
Submit yourself to God. Resist the devil. So we see a tension of wills. I'm finding that one of the things that gets lost a lot in modern education is any discussion of the will. We talk about having free will. What do we mean by our will? What does it mean? You have a will? Does little Emmy have a will?
We talk about a strong-willed child. So,
A strong-willed child?
I think in a secular term, it's like a desire, like your will is like your desire to do something. So like my will to graduate is like my wanting to do something. It's my wanting to graduate.
My wanting, my desire, has something to do with the heart, right? Right. And we kind of ignore that in modern education. We talk about free will, I can just choose, or determinism, all the stuff that determines me. I do something bad, it's not my fault because I was raised badly or somebody stepped on my toe when I was 3 or whatever. But the notion of the will, we have an inclination to go one way or the other. Our heart wants to go one way or the other. Have you ever been conflicted about a decision? If you say no, I don't believe you. And have you ever been conflicted about a decision where you know what's right, but you don't quite want to do that thing? Again, if you're saying no, I don't believe you. Right? And so we have a struggle of the will. And I know in the 1700s, 1800s, they would talk about breaking a child's will. They probably took it a little bit to the extreme in terms of some of what we today might consider child abuse. But the notion that a will can be, to some degree, shaped, I think, is really helpful. Even secular psychology people will sometimes acknowledge that a child has to be taught to want what is right. They don't automatically do that. If you've tried to get a 2-year-old to share recently, you've probably noticed that. So this whole idea of the will, it seems to me, is getting lost a bit in our discussions of free will and determinism. As an educational system, we're becoming real heavy on the determinism side. So if you say, okay, let's take little Jeremy, an imaginary child, who is very badly behaved in school. And on what besides Jeremy's choices do we sometimes blame or attribute that behavior?
Mom and Dad.
Mom and Dad. Mom and Dad have not parented. Poverty.
Food scarcity.
But Jeremy doesn't have enough to eat, so he's acting out.
Trauma.
Trauma is the big one. Anybody here experience trauma? If you're saying no, I don't believe you. Jeremy. Now, those forces can contribute, absolutely. But we're very quick to say, I had to do it. I was convicted deeply by a quote from C.S. Lewis 3 or 4 weeks ago where he said, often when I think I'm confessing, I'm doing something else. And what I'm doing is telling God why I had to do that sin. Asking God to excuse rather than forgive me. I couldn't help it because I was late. I was running late. I might have been embarrassed. Not actually confessing and going before. I'm not because it's the inclination of my heart that he wishes to have me confess. So that idea of a will, to me, is something we need to keep in mind. Okay. In a state of innocence, man had complete freedom and natural ability to will and to do what is good and pleasing to God. God also made man so that he could lose that freedom. Okay, so here's where we get Augustine saying man could sin, man could not sin, man could have that choice, and having made that choice, he could lose the ability to choose the good. Jonathan Edwards, right? He talks about free will, and boy, he could be writing today. He talks about free will. Yes, we have free will, but the free will is to choose according to our inclinations. True or false? It is generally a good idea to choose according to our inclinations. Probably not. Is it sometimes a good idea to choose according to our inclinations? Sure, we can be. I mean, you are saved, are you not? Okay, and so we do have times when our will is consistent with God. But choosing our inclinations, that's why the follow your dreams, follow your heart, dangerous thing that we're teaching. I didn't look up Edwards. I actually got that quote from Sproul. Now, Pastor Luke had to straighten me out on this point. In the garden, Adam and Eve were not perfect. They were innocent. And I had to have that explained to me a couple different times. Innocent. When we think innocent, we think a little baby, right? Well, the baby, in a sense, is not, in fact, innocent. They were innocent in the sense they could go either way. They were innocent of any kind of sin.
Could we substitute the word blameless, maybe?
Blameless might be.
You couldn't blame any. They were blameless. They may have been. Maybe they bickered, or maybe they did something. I don't know what. I can't think of anything, but despite that, they were blameless. I don't know.
I didn't know the difference between right and wrong. So I say that blameless in the eyes of God is a good way of saying that, because God didn't yet judge them because they didn't know the difference. God began to judge them once they knew the difference, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And I'm going to suggest that they did not bicker until after the fall, because that would be a negative inclination. Now, help me in responding to my, but rather arrogant colleague who adamantly maintains, well, but wait a minute, they didn't know what it was to sin. They didn't know what sin really was. And so they can't really be held responsible for the choice that they ultimately made, because they didn't know any better. Okay, so tell me what I should tell Dr. Hernflor the next time he says that. He or she says that. It's okay.
God had told them what not to do. Yeah.
I told
them.
They
did know
what not to do.
Well, in fact, he told Adam. Adam was supposed to pass it on to his wife because he was the Lord of the home and he was the first preacher.
Adam
so
wasn't.
He was supposed to. He had been trained by the Lord, so he understood, and he was supposed to pass it on to his wife.
Adam ought to have passed it on. He didn't, apparently. We don't know whether she was standing nearby when he said that. She is not without blame either, right? Because, well, you've been around kids, right? You tell the kid, you can do anything you want except, and what happens? They do the thing. I saw Xander Lee do it just yesterday. Xander, you can play with any of these 4 things, but don't touch the...
See, Adam had a chance to confront the serpent because he was knowledgeable. He had spent many a cool days and evenings being taught. So he was discipled by God himself. Where Adam failed is he didn't speak up. He didn't protect his wife.
Yeah, Adam didn't speak up. And Eve had issues as well. Can someone please find Ecclesiastes 7:29? And then I think somebody else, Genesis, let's do Genesis 3:4-6. Please.
Only see this, I have discovered that God made people upright, but they pursued many schemes.
God made people upright, but they pursued many schemes. Even in his depressed, why did I do this state, Solomon gets it completely. He made us right, but we pursued many schemes. Do you find yourself going before the Father sometimes in confession saying, why in the world did I do that? You know, I knew better. I knew what your call was. Who has Genesis 3:4-6? Please, Melissa.
You will not certainly die, the serpent said to the woman, for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some of it to her husband who was with her, and he ate it.
Okay, so God had told them what about the fruit? If you eat the fruit, what will happen? You'll die. Okay. Well, that doesn't sound good. And so here comes this, you're not going to die. You will be like God. Oh, Eve, how could you?
I stayed for a couple of days because
She knew better. Or at least she had been told better. Do we ever fall prey to that kind of desire? Do we ever want to be like God? I mean, in a negative kind of way, a usurping kind of way.
Sure.
Do we
Well,
ever
like
try
to take out our wrath on somebody, like that.
Well, we
So,
go,
to me, in a
ah!
negative way?
When I'm gonna take out my wrath on somebody, when
Yeah.
I am going to go after that person because they backed into my beautiful little car and they didn't, I did, and by God,
I'm gonna make them.
I have a neighbor who has some issues, and I'm looking for an opportunity to share Christ with him, and I think it's not far away, but an unneighbor ran off the road, ran into a telephone pole, and ran into this guy's yard. Now this guy wasn't hurt, nor was his yard hurt, except that he has 2 tire tracks in his yard. And he was explaining, he wasn't there when it happened, but he's going to find out who that guy was from the police, and he's going to go after the insurance company to make them fix his lawn. Oh, by golly. Now I have no reason to believe that this guy yet knows the Lord, so I can understand his response. So when we want to take revenge, do we ever tell God, I know better?
You do. It's not a correct statement, but yes. Like, I feel like we as humans are very prideful and want control of situations. I think that's where like anxiety, depression comes from also, because we want so much control over something that we fret over it too often. Or we are so worried about our past that no one else will love us, so we take away God's, like, we say, no, you can't fix me. And so I think that mental health has a lot into it, but I think it's a lot of pride a lot of times.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought up pride and control. Pride is what Lewis would call my besettings, and so much gets back to pride. I want to control it. Whenever I sin, I'm basically telling God, I think I know better than you do. However innocent my sin might look to the world. Yeah, God, okay, you know a lot. I get that. You've got the future, but I know my child. I know my colleague. You don't understand, God. It was beautiful. I was sitting on my back porch, very convicted in a good way about a way that I had failed Christ. And really feeling the burden of that and bringing that before him, but continuing to be burdened with it, not able to let it go to him. And about that time, Jamie texted me a link to a song. And the song was about, you are loved and cherished and know you live because Christ has died for you. Jenny's never done that before. Yeah. Like, whoa. That was just God putting his arms around me. But also at the same time in a loving way saying, hey, I know better. Don't be telling me you get to keep your guilt. Don't be telling me you're going to cycle all around down into depression because you've done so badly. You can get, I can say this because I struggle with depression. You can get almost proud of your depression, as weird as that sounds, because you start to think, well, of course I'm depressed because I'm such this bad sinner. That was horrible grammar, wasn't it? That I'm a horrible sinner, and so God, you must now really like me because I'm all depressed because I'm a sinner. No, feed my sheep, feed my sheep. Get off your fanny pat and listen to me. Okay. One of the things Sproul brings up, and I really liked it, to say, okay, so we've got this kind of tension between the old man, which is our pre-fall man, and the new man, which is real in us. So Sproul challenges us, what are some of the things we could do to strengthen the new man? You've probably heard the story, I'm told it from Native American culture, but I'm not sure, about the 2 wolves are inside me, and the one that will live is the one that I feed. So it's although from a non-Christian culture, it's a good analogy. So we want to strengthen the new man. We want to make, or the new man or the new woman, we want to make the redeemed person's voice louder. What can we do? What's our workout for? we go to the gym when we.
Well, we have to stay in the Word, so that feeds that side. That it helps us to stay in relationship with God. So we have to, pray and spend time with God and study and His Word, so that part is in the forefront of our mind.
That is so huge, and only recently have I really appreciated. Christians who do not spend any time in the Word except when they come to church service, and it's easy to be led astray. More than once when I've been struggling with something, Pastor Lucas said to me, "You need to get in the Word." And I don't know that I believe the open the Bible wherever it happens to fall thing. I'm not big on that. But often when I have followed that advice, God has led me directly to a passage because I've been reading it the day before or something that really speaks to me. Stay in the Word, talk about the Word with each other.
Christian fellowship.
Christian fellowship, talk with each other. I love about this group because we can be somewhat vulnerable with each other. We can say, "Hey, I really messed up. How about?" We can have our iPad go off in the middle of service, and and people forgive us right away. So, but actively strengthening that's something Brother Al has to do a great deal with the clients he works with. Right? Is encourage them to strengthen the part of them that will say, "No, I'm not going to do these substances," but we have the Word of Christ dwelling in us. Okay. Man fell into a state of sin by his disobedience, and so completely lost his ability to will any spiritual good involving salvation. Consequently, fallen man is by nature completely opposed to spiritual good, is dead in sin, and is unable by his own strength to convert himself or prepare himself for conversion. Total depravity. When I was first Presbyterian, if you will, the real Presbyterian, forgive me. That phrase depravity, I agreed, but it made me a little nervous. I mean, it sounds so severe. Depravity, we can't choose the good. There's just no way. And the world and maybe even big parts of Christianity have lost focus on that, I'm afraid. I was listening to, I will not say the name, but it's a very popular preacher. I was listening to it because I was worried that about a sister who was listening to the preacher, and there was no consciousness of sin at all and what Christ has done for it. A matter of the internal heart, like Michaela was saying earlier, right? So people can do good things, right? So Jonas Salk found penicillin, and so penicillin saves us a lot of trouble. There were presumably at least some unbelievers among those who created the vaccine for COVID, right? In fact, my guess is there were probably more unbelievers than believers on those research teams. They did good stuff, right? Mm-hmm. That's good stuff, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Is God pleased? Gotta go in it. I'm afraid that, not here, but as a culture, we get quickly back into a kind of works righteousness thing. I mean, how could God not be delighted with somebody who does all of these wonderful things, whatever they believe, because they're out there doing all these wonderful things.
Because our works is as filthy rags in the sight of God.
Yes.
And He does not change.
Oh, yes.
He's immutable.
Amen. What does He say to Israel about their sacrifices when they're straying? Don't even give me that. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. And, oh, sure, we can do good things. And Sproul puts it, we obey the traffic laws, right? We can, more or less. And we have certain helpers in blue to help us obey the traffic laws when we tend to forget. Unbelievers care for their children. Many do. Unbelievers stay faithful in marriage. Many do. Okay? And Christians fail in both those regards. But if we're talking about a matter of the heart before God, finally, this good preacher got through to me that God gets to define good, we do not. And what is what is good before God. The way Sproul puts it, fallen man can still achieve civic virtue or civic righteousness, but cannot incline himself to the will of God. Apart from God, We're just, no matter how good it looks, and sometimes it looks really good to the world, it's not going to be there. Pastor Luke put it like this: man is completely self-absorbed. Oh, not me. How about you? Oh my goodness. How quickly does it get back to me? It's not about me. I have to be told that over and over again. How about, let's do, how about John 15:5? Could somebody find John 15:5? This, Melissa, looks like you're getting there. Gosh, I should say Melissa B. and Melissa G, right?
Yeah, you said that. I looked at him like, which one?
You got it, Judy? Perfect.
I am the vine, you are the branches. If a man remains in me and I in him, he will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing.
Vine and branches. Have you gotten a look at a vine of some kind? Anybody been in a vineyard or seen grapes grow? I actually helped my dad make wine in the basement for about 5 years. It's totally legal. We didn't sell it, I promise. And today I happen to be a teetotaler, but we got to close up and look. And what happens to the grapes when they get cut off? We die. The grapes can't be grapes apart from the vine, and we're made to be grapes. That bowl is made to light up red and blue. We can't do what we're meant to do apart from.
Why God told Adam and Eve that they would die is that they didn't, and even though the serpent said, "Well, you're not going to die," they didn't die physically, but they died spiritually, and that's that was the first instance of the vine, the grapes being cut off of the vine. I think that's really good. That is the total depravity. I'm in awe because you said that, I didn't realize that God had told them they would die. And then Serpent was like, no, you won't. And they didn't. And I was like, oh, wait, but they died spiritually. And that, is just connecting. So I'm verbally processing that right now.
Wow, I'm really glad you said that because I have struggled a little bit with that. They didn't die, but yet they did because separation from God is spiritual. At my age, it's hitting me. Now, I'm not in a hurry to die, but I'm certainly ready. I hope it isn't today or tomorrow, but, it is, praise God. But how briefly we're here relative to all of history. And we're back to 200 years from now. Nobody's going to know I even existed. There's going to be a computer record. That's all. But there's all of eternity. And all of eternity spiritually away from God. Oh my goodness. So with that in mind, what's the difference between doing good things and being good in God's sight? Is there a difference?
Doing and being.
Doing good things. Maybe I should qualify it further. Doing good things as society would generally define it, and being good in God's sight. Is there a difference?
Well, being good is obeying God, but doing good things it involves some pride, like I'm somehow earning His respect or something. Whereas being good is more. We talked about, our works are nothing, really. It's our total obedience.
That's so eloquently put. Being good is obeying God, right? And
sorry,
go ahead, it's fine.
I'm thinking, I can't remember what it's in the Old Testament. But there's a story where a guy is commanded to destroy everything that this city did. And so he goes in. I'm not really familiar with Old Testament stories, but he goes in and he plans to destroy everything. And then he's like, oh wait, there's sacrifices here that I can sacrifice to God. And so he takes them, got to sacrifice to God, and God is like, what are you doing? I told you to destroy everything. He's like, but I'm doing it for you. And I think that's a good example of he's trying to do good in the eyes of God, but he didn't directly obey God. He was trying to earn God's favor, and I think that's adding
great
what
point. I can't remember who it is either, but I can remember well the story. Yeah. And even when I might think I'm doing this for God, as soon as I think that I'm doing this for God, listen to that heresy. I'm going to do something for you.
Check me out.
I'm good. That's mine.
Pat myself on the back.
Ma'am?
Pat myself on the back.
Oh, what? You know, a conviction phrase that God uses with me often is in grade school chorus, Mrs. Dowler, our director, would say, "Don't break your arms patting yourself on the back." And when God wants to quickly convict me, often I will hear that phrase go through. Okay, make it 3 minutes of grace. 3 minutes of grace, okay. All right, so, we just have the 4. Let me make sure I'm correct. Oh, we don't. We have more than 4. When God converts a sinner and brings him to a state of grace, he frees him from his natural enslavement to sin. By God's grace alone, freely given, sinful man is enabled to will and to do what is spiritually good. However, since the old sinful nature remains, the believer cannot consistently or perfectly will to do what is good, but also wills evil. And I have the verse in Galatians, we won't take time for the moment to read it, where Paul is saying, the good that I want to do, I don't do, and the bad that I do. Do you catch yourself caught in that at times? Yeah. We have both natures are there. We can't consistently choose the good. We can sometimes, when we're allowing the Holy Spirit to work in us. And when we do, it's all by God's grace. In what situations are you especially aware of that struggle between the two natures? Any particular situations come to mind?
Well, I think as a practicing Christian, you're aware of it every day. That's why
Every day, for sure.
That's why you have a craving for spiritual milk and to be immersed in forgiveness daily, because it's an awareness that the Holy Spirit convicts you of.
Absolutely.
So you have the full armor of God on every day.
We do. Every day we feel, in particular situations, I become particularly aware of it. One is when if I can spare my kids, my now adult children, with all due respect, they're not quite as mature as you, though they're much older. If I can spare them some pain or some suffering, I want to do it. And sometimes, not so much now, they're kind of, in some ways they're sort of evening out, though I'm still praying for them to come to Christ. But especially when they were in college and right after, often it would involve money. For John, my oldest, when it was my handful, occasionally it involved paying a fine for him. For the other 2, it's more they're in financial trouble. I can bail them out to a certain degree. And sometimes that's perfectly okay to do, and parents do, and my parents have done so for me over the years. But sometimes it's not okay with God. And then I know that struggle. I know there are occasions where I know what I should do. Oh, Matthew wouldn't mind my telling this. He wanted me to co-sign for a car loan for him. And it was, if you know about co-signing, you know that adds that amount to your debt. And I said, Matt, I just can't go there. And he was not happy with me. And I really struggled with that because I really wanted to preserve my relationship with Matthew, but I knew what God was calling me to do, and it was not to do that. He forgave me, though. In fact, today he will tell you that he's glad that I didn't. In some situations, when somebody we love is in danger, when our pride or our future is on the line, I have, to my shame, not spoken forth at work sometimes because I was backing off from the reputation thing. They'll think me this weird little fundamentalist. Mm-hmm. Well, they already do. What's the big problem? Goodness me. Okay, I said 3, so we'll stick with it. The will of man is perfectly and permanently inclined to good only in the state of glory. I love this idea of sanctification. When I first began reading C.S. Lewis, I heard him talking about what I call God's shaping process. Some of Luther's followers, not Luther himself so much, but some of Luther's followers got into a thing for a while like, we can do whatever we want. Doesn't matter how much we sin because we got grace. So it's all good. As I was talking about with Pastor Luke, one of the phrases that he used that really intrigued me was, our obedience, I think I have it here, our obedience now matters in heaven. That is, our submission to the sanctification process has implications, not because, I'm going to get more, what do we used to sing about? Jewels for a crown above. Yeah, not about I'm getting more brownie points. The way that it seems to me that he communicates it is about relationship with him. All the elect are going to go to heaven. No question, no problem, and that certainly is going to be enough. But through sanctification, we become more obedient because we grow in intimacy with Him. And so there can yet in heaven yet be degrees of intimacy. Michaela, I think you were going to say something, didn't you?
Oh, I mean, I had a thought.
Well,
but
sure.
That's in my mind, I guess. I'm just when I've taught youth in the past, and when I was even in like at camp, the year that I gave my life to Christ, I remember seeing an example of like a long rope that like was as long as this room, I'd say, and my youth pastor brought out the rope, and on one end was just like a red tape that was like about maybe an inch, like 2 to 3 inches, I'd say, long. And then like this is the amount of life that we have on earth, and the rest is eternity. And like so putting it into that perspective, he'd like put a penny on the table, and he was like, this penny represents like us on earth right now, and the rest is like eternity. And so to me, like that made a big difference of like why it's so important, like what impact we have on the rest. He's like, what you do in this small amount of time impacts the rest of this road.
Oh my God, that's
And whether it's
beautiful.
gonna be dark or white, you know, like that. So
I wonder if the pastor would mind if I borrowed that example.
I'm sure he's taught it before. I'm sure it'd be fine.
Awesome, awesome. That
There's also an analogy like the rope, which I've not heard the rope one, but like a clock, and you think of, all eternity is every, all of it until the very, nanosecond. Our life here is like a nanosecond, even not even that, of the entire face of the clock, hours of the clock. That's another
yes,
thing that
yes.
helps with that.
Yeah, that's really good.
That's
perspective, that visual.
yeah, and I've heard Carl Sagan say something similar, even though to my knowledge he
that's the
doesn't
same.
yet embrace Christ. And yes, so very true. And Lewis is emphatic that not only are we being sanctified, but we are being used in other people's lives, and at any one moment we are moving others toward either more deep, an eternal horror or an eternal glory. So I love that way of thinking about it. Now, have I sinned against you by taking 6 minutes of grace when I asked for 3? Okay, so I won't take any more, but please look at questions 29 and 30, because we're tied with how many points each one? Like 4 points
I
each
think we each had 5.
5 points each one. So next week we'll play Bing again. We'll probably go to 11 through 20 or something like that. And then the group that wins gets to tell me what to bring next time. But it can't be something I cook, because you don't want to eat anything that I cook.
Maybe we can do boys against girls. They count play.
It's all in where you sit. Okay. Michaela, could you pray us out this morning?
Yeah.
For the service?
For sure.